Welcome to the Gentleman's Guide to Gaming. You've decided to skip school, it's not for you today. Your friends are all out in the woods smoking cannabis and having a bit to drink, and to be honest, Mr. Robinson's maths class doesn't seem particularly fun in comparison, so you jump the fence, as it were, run across the field along the back of the school, and enter the woods, those woods you know so well, those woods you've hung out with your friends on so many occasions. You're all a bunch of party girls, although you do have more common sense than most. And so as you walk through the woods, you realise quite quickly that you're lost. You've been turned around somewhere. Maybe it's because of the winter evenings. They do come down quite soon in this part of the world, and so it's a bit darker than usual, but still you trudge on, fairly certain you'll recognise Natalie's shrill laughter quite soon, and that will make you realise you're going in the right direction. However, the first thing you encounter isn't Natalie, it's not your friends, and it's not this smell of cannabis smoke wafting through the trees. It's a male humanoid, and by humanoid I mean he's got a human male's body, but he's got the head of a deer. And that freaks you out at first. Who wouldn't it freak out? And yet you do have a fair amount of savvy. You're fairly certain it's one of the boys from school around your age, probably doing some prank trying to freak out the girls. So you gather yourself and you swear you're not going to fall for this. So you shout out Simon, because you're fairly certain it's Simon, he does things like this. And you run after him because he's disappeared behind a tree like that. And so you run around the tree trying to catch him out, at which point he digs his claws into your wrists. Far into your wrists through tendon. And that is the head of a deer on his body. There's no seam on that mask, as he drags you through the bushes, screaming, through the briar, screaming, through the thorns and the thickets and the trees and the grass, all of them razor sharp, all of them thorny, as they tear at your skin, your flesh, your muscle and your bone, as the thorns tear at your soul, ripping it apart chunk by chunk, making you forget who you were, making you forget your real life, as you enter the realm of the true fae, not a place of Tinkerbells, not a place of unicorns prancing around in glades, but a place of pure horror beyond your imagination. This is the realm of the true fae as described by people such as Virgil and Lovecraft. This is the realm of the true fae that is a realm of nightmare, where your keeper, the true fae who has sought you out and decided to snatch you from the real world, has decided this person, this mortal, will be entertaining, so I think I will take her. So this member of the gentry, as the true fae are known, sets you to a task that you will perform for eternity if that's what amuses him, and in this case he decides that you were always very good at gymnastics at school, because the true fae is watching you all the time after all, so I think you're going to dance for me. So the true fae makes you dance, and dance, and dance, and after hours, after days of dancing, your feet are bleeding, they're bloody, you haven't stopped dancing, you've been unable to stop dancing. Eventually your feet grow so pained, your legs grow so pained, you can dance no more, and you fall flat on your arse on the stage that he has erected of bones of the previous poor dancers that were dragged to this realm. Well, that's not enough for him, so he hooks thorns through your shoulder blades and he elevates you, and you dance for him like a marionette on strings, on your own tendons stretching up further than the eye can see, and you dance, and you dance, and you dance for days, for weeks, for months, maybe even years. And that's your eternal torment in the realm of the true fae. Eventually, somehow, you're not sure how, you escape. Was it through your own wiles? Maybe someone else in his court saw fit to free you. Maybe the true fae himself decided to have another game, a hunt, and he freed you himself. But you waste no time. You go back the way you came. You remember things now. You struggle to collect your memories, and you realise you've got to get back to the real world. You've got to escape. Now is your only chance to do so. And so you run back through those thickets, those bushes, those trees, those long grasses of razors, of thorns that tear at you. But you pay the physical pain no heed, because now you are back in the real world. You're breathing again. You are back among the land of reality. Except something about you has changed, something about you that you can't quite perceive at this point, but you have been marked by the true fae. You look slightly different than a normal person. That doesn't matter to you, because the place you want to go, despite the fact you never respected them, despite the fact you never liked your father, is your parents' house. You need to get back to your parents. You were only 16 when you went missing. You must have been away for months, surely. It seems like months. It doesn't seem like... It seems like a long time, but it could have only been months, surely. So you run down the roads that you know, you run down the streets, people stare at you as if you are a monster, and you pay them no heed because you need to get back to your family's home. You need to feel your mother's warm embrace as she welcomes you back after you've been away for so long, after she tells you she loves you. You need to feel your dad doing the same, despite the fact you hated him growing up, despite the fact he always stood in the way of all the things you thought were fun and cool, and yet you want nothing more than to be embraced by both of them, for both of them to tell you everything's alright and they will protect you now. Except when you run up to your front door, and when you see through your front window and see your parents sat around the dining table, you see another figure at that dining table, a young girl, a girl that looks an awful lot like you, maybe a few years older. In fact, your parents look a few years older as well. You realise that your life has been lived for you by an imposter that's fooled your parents to the extent that they're laughing. They're laughing at the dining table as they pass the salt. They never laughed with you. You were always a troublesome teenager. They didn't really get on with you, or you didn't get on with them. Either way, they seem to be having a joyous life now with their daughter, who looks about 19, maybe 20. And look at you. You look down at yourself. You're a being of shadow stuff. You're a being of pockmarked with blacks, dark shadows, and you feel yourself slinking away. You feel yourself realising that you are utterly lost. And that is Changeling, the Lost. You are lost in this world of beautiful madness. Your life has been replaced by a fetch, placed there by the true Fae when they snatched you, and they often plan your snatching for a very long time so that your fetch gets to know you very well indeed before it takes your place. What is the purpose of a game like Changeling, the Lost? Well, let's go through the game chapter by chapter. Of course, we start off with an introductory story which goes through the usual rigmarole of telling you about, well, giving you a scenario such as the one I've just described. And while it's a bit heavy for someone who isn't familiar with the setting, it is a very good story. I'm trying to recall the name of it, but I'll just look up what Alec Baldwin said. It's a very good story about a fetch and a man going to kill him, from what I remember. But the main bulk of the first chapter, of course, is describing the setting and describing what are the true Fae, who are the changelings, who are you, who is lost, why do you end up convening together with other lost? And the whole reason behind it is simply because if you didn't, you would be utterly alone in a world that no longer recognises you, a world where you are the imposter, you're the one that's not been living your life. And so it's a very evocative, very terrifying story. It's not your Changeling the Dreaming with its shadows of whimsy. This is a realm of beautiful madness, as White Wolf put the tagline on this game. It is a scary game, a game where you realise that you could lose everything, and in that sense it's an awful lot like Wraith the Oblivion. You've got to analyse what you have lost, and so you're introduced to things such as the courts of the Fae as you create your character. Maybe your Fae, your Changeling decides to join the Court of Spring, otherwise known as the Court of Desire. Their raison d'etre is to embrace desire, embrace life, embrace lust, all of those things that make you feel alive again, all of those things that you lost upon entering the realm of the true Fae, except as they grow more and more decadent, they become closer and closer to those keepers that snatched them in the first place. Maybe you join the Court of Summer, whose primary instinct is wrath. They wish nothing more than the utter destruction of the true Fae and any who serve them, and yet their anger blinds them to other realities around them. The Court of Autumn celebrates fear and worships it in equal measure. Whilst they are utterly afraid of the true Fae, they have such powers over the fear, well, other people's fears. It is quite something to behold, and they are my favourite court in the entire game. The Ashen Court, as they are otherwise known. And finally you have the Court of Winter, possibly the most powerful court, if only they could stop hiding from the true Fae. Their emotion is sorrow. They are utterly afraid, they are utterly terrified that the true Fae may reach them. Or would it be better to say they are apathetic, they're beyond caring, they are put to the point of just acceptance, and yet they wield such power if only they could find the drive to use it. And while you also have your courts, who I suppose resemble covenants, when you exit the realm of the true Fae, you pick a seeming. A seeming, for instance, you could be a darkling, like the character I was talking about, a nocturnal character who can manipulate shadow stuff. Maybe you're an elemental, maybe you've got aspects of elemental about yourself now. And that doesn't mean you walk around like a big stone golem. It means that if you, for instance, have the element of sky or air about you, maybe your hair is constantly blowing. There's always something slightly off about the lost, much like Prometheans, except less disconcerting, arguably, depending on which seeming you have. Maybe you are one of the fairest. The fairest, of course, are utterly beautiful, to the point of almost pain to look upon them, but the only beauty that the fairest hold is skin deep. Fairest often hold the sickest, most twisted cores beneath that beautiful flesh on that they exhibit. Of course, most of the seemings, or all of the seemings, have kiths as well. If you want to specify even further, the kiths can be taken as bloodlines in a sense, although there are also noble houses of changelings you may want to join. They give you great advantages in terms of meta gameplay and also from a plot point of view, but they also bring with them great disadvantages too. And the powers you wield in the place of disciplines, you have contracts. For instance, you could go with the simple, you manipulating people's dreams, or you could have the contract of mirror, where you can alter your own appearance. And you have contracts that tie into your seeming and tie into your court. So going back to the fairest, you could have the contract of vainglory. At 2 points, I believe, it means you can become a fantastic dancer or performer, basically the best in the world for a short period of time. At 4 points, you can become so hideous that people cannot remember what you truly looked like. You can basically become a being of pure terror, essentially showing the person observing you that rotten core inside you. And by doing so, with people not being able to analyse that you are in fact a changeling or something slightly weird, you manage to maintain your your clarity. Your clarity is what keeps you in the real world, but at the same time being able to differentiate the real world from fairy and being able to identify what is real, what is not. And being in the autumnal court, you may have the contract of fleeting autumn, being able to induce fear in others, or eternal autumn, being able to harvest things aplenty, or make withering curses on other people. There's a great range of contracts. Some of the best ones are the goblin contracts, that you can make deals with goblins to acquire them, and they are much easier to acquire than normal contracts, but they carry with them great disadvantages. For instance, there's a fool's gold one, where you can trick someone into believing that something of minimal value is worth a hell of a lot, but if they do work out that it's worth nothing, they know instinctively who it was that fooled them. There's another one that allows you to bypass any door, but by doing it on one occasion, it also means that the next person that calls at your door can do the same thing. There's one that allows you to heal someone momentarily, but for the next day it means that any wounds they suffer, you suffer instead, and so on. You see what I mean? And there's pledges as well. Pledges are, in the chivalrous sense, vows, oaths, and corporals. Corporals being a pledge tied to an actual being. And so you can have an oath such as, I'll read this one aloud if I can find it. You can have oaths that essentially act like boons in the vampire sense. You can basically promise to do something, and of course if you don't carry out that promise you end up cursed in some way. For instance, the oath of the rose and thorn. By my true name I grant you sight for 1 moon, see the things of dream and wonder with eyes open like the blossom of the rose. By your true name you grant me the right to ask a boon within the cycle of that moon. Swear that you shall grant it to me so long as it does not bring you harm. Swear that you will keep this knowledge beneath the rose. Let he who is forsworn in this way find the thorns of this oath in him. Madness and ill luck follow you if you are false. I shall grant thee a boon, and be followed by misfortune should I prove false. Do you agree? This book contains everything you need to play Changeling the Lost, surprisingly enough, and there's some fantastic expansions for it as well. It's got some excellent storyteller hints too, and the best ones in a New World of Darkness book in my opinion, and it also has Miami as a setting, and it goes into great detail, and if you weren't interested in running a game in Miami before, you will be after reading this. I recommend Changeling the Lost most heartily because it is an excellent game in the New World of Darkness. Thank you very much.